light, great quality. And you're probably wondering, like, Vu, why do you have like two different ones? Like, why did you have a 24 G Master and a 24 f1.8? This lens could be had for around $350 to $400. If this one breaks, I'm not gonna cry about it. If something happens to it, you know, it's not the end of the world. The G Master is expensive. And the reason why I actually have this is, again, I have a fishing channel, and when I go full frame, this is what I bring. I don't bring the G Master because it's heavier, this is smaller, lighter, and again, you're gonna see a common theme in this video. I like lighter lenses, period. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've had heavy lenses, I've had the whole 9 yards, and at the end of the day, I really value small, lightweight glass. Just to prove a point though, I'm going to switch out between this 24mm G Master and this 24mm Samyang lens just for you to get a sense of the image quality. So now I am on the 24mm f1.8 from Samyang. Keep in mind, I have mist filters on this lens and this lens, so it affects the way the highlights are bloomed and probably detail on my face, but I like the look, so just letting you know. Wondering, I use Freewell mist filters. I currently have a Freewell standard 1/8 mist magnetic mist filter on the Samyang 24 f1.8. This is the versatile mist filter from Freewell, where you could actually put a VND magnetically on here, and you could remove the mist ND with just a magnet, and you can put it right back. Same goes with their standard mist. So I have mist on, mist off, because these are magnetic. Mist back on. So next up, I have the 35mm G Master. Obviously we're in 35mm range, and I recommend the 35mm f1.4 G Master because it gives you a true 52mm-ish look for your APS-C camera, and I think everyone needs a 50mm, the nifty 50 look in their kit, and the 35 f1.4 is the best. However, there is focus breathing. You do have focus breathing compensation in your FX30, but if that's a concern and you want to just make sure you stay super high quality the whole time, I recommend the next best option is the Sony 35mm f1.8 lens. There's a solid, this is double the price of this, so you're gonna be paying extra for the bigger size, quality of the body, but this lens is super sharp. This is no slouch. And if you want something even cheaper than this, you get the Samyang 35 f1.8, cheaper, and to be honest, I think it's just as good as Sony 35mm f1.8 minus some additional chromatic aberration here and there that you probably won't be able to tell. So yeah, and again, video lenses is all about character, so if there's a little bit extra character in the lens you buy, that does not mean it's a bad thing. And again, Samyang, how's autofocus on the 24mm f1.8? Solid, yes. So yeah, that is that. Other honorable mentions is a 30mm f1.4 from Sigma, very tiny lens, also an f1.4. So if you really want to get some more that f1.4 bokeh action on your camera, 30 f1.4 is a good lens, and it's cheap, but I'll be honest, it's not nearly as sharp as the 35 1.8 here, and this is the full frame version, not the APS-C version. You have to make sure you get the FE 35 1.8, and it is like $600 to $700 or something like that. The 35mm f1.8 Sony that is for APS-C is a lot cheaper. I don't recommend it. Yeah, and if you want something even more crazy, you get the Sigma 35mm f1.2, which is also a fantastic lens, but again, expensive, and it is massive. And again, once again, size does matter to me in terms of the lenses that you use on these cameras. They're so small bodies, like, and it's just weird to carry a big lens all the time. It defeats the purpose of it. Another cheap option also is a 33mm Viltrox, which is also a great lens, cheap, f1.4 as well. So you have plenty of options there, but these are the ones that I recommend in my kit. Next up is the 50mm range, and to me, you either go all out or you don't. You go all out, probably one of the greatest lenses on the planet, arguably. This is the best 50mm you could buy on any system. You quote me on that. You could even check the science on it. This is the best. It's also $2,000, but this is the 50mm f1.2 G Master, and every Sony user should have this lens, in my opinion. Yes, it's pricey, but it's like an amazing lens. So this will give you roughly a 72mm focal range, which is good. You know, it doesn't get you close to 85, but you know, it gives you a nice portrait lens on your APS-C camera. And for budget-minded people, I actually recommend the Samyang 45 f1.8, which is a fantastic little lens. You could also get the 55 f1.8 for Sony. It's more expensive than this lens. You do get a tighter focal length and a closer to 85mm, so if you're into that. But it's also more expensive, $600 so. But if you're just trying to stay like at a 50mm, like, you know, 65 to 70mm range, 45mm Samyang is a fantastic option. Obviously $2,000 for the Sony 50 f1.2. A lot of people ask me if they should get the 50mm f1.8 from Sony. I'd skip that lens for video. It's not great. It's not that sharp. So that is that. Another great option for you is the 56mm Sigma lens, and I believe Viltrox also has a 56mm f1.4 lens. So the Sigma and the Viltrox are 56mm f1.4, APS-C only, so you can't use those in your full frame. These are both full frame glass, so you could use them on both your cameras. Next up is the 85mm range, which will give you a 135 equivalent focal length on your APS-C body. I currently own the Sigma 85mm f1.8. This lens is fantastic, and it is relatively cheap. I think it's like $1,200 to $1,300, but it's f1.4. Get nice depth of field, gets nice light, great autofocus, super sharp. Can't go wrong with this lens. Obviously, there's 85mm f1.8 from Sony, which is like $400 or $500. Fantastic. You could also get a Viltrox 85, also fantastic. And I believe the Samyang 85 f1.4 is also an amazing lens. You really can't go wrong with any 85mm you get for the Sony E-mount system. Honestly, if you're feeling cheap, just get the cheapest one, and I'm sure you'd be very satisfied. Plenty of reviews online. They're all great. I'm just a D-bag who likes a lot of bokeh, and I got the f1.4 Sigma, which is the greatest 85 f1.4 in my opinion available right now. The G Master is a bit old, and it focuses kind of slow, things like that, but it's still, I mean, slow for Sony standards, right? It's still fantastic. This thing is just really fast, and I love this lens, and it's smaller. It's a nice compact size. It's not too much bigger than the 85 f1.8, and this is an f1.4. So there's that. So yeah, that's pretty much the main collection of lenses I recommend you get for your FX30. Those of you new to Sony, those of you who are wondering, you know, about lenses for Sony, you know, again, all the lenses I mentioned, you should have no concerns with autofocus. You should have no concerns with image quality. The only thing really is your budget, and if you want to carry around a big lens. So people ask me, Vu, you have an FX3, you have a Sony a7S III, you have a Sony a7 IV. Why do you have FX30 for? One, it's a backup camera. Two, when I go travel, when I do outdoor stuff, fishing stuff, I don't want to carry around big stuff, right? I could get an equivalent full frame look on my APS-C camera with a small ass lens. So you're talking about carrying around something like this versus carrying something like this that is bigger, heavier and more expensive when I'm like going out to a river, running around with my kids, stuff like that. This kind of thing matters to me for personal use. And professional use, I could use it as well. That's why I have FX30, and that is the true advantage of APS-C. The biggest advantage of APS-C is the size. Smaller sensor, meaning you could get smaller lenses. Size is important. Bigger is not always better. Outside of the bedroom. Don't ask me how I know. I hope this video was helpful. I hope it was insightful, helped you make a purchase decision for lenses for your FX30. Links in the description below. Obviously, if you click that, I'll get commission so I could buy more rice bags for my family. And that's not racist. Everybody eats rice, you know. All because I'm Asian, all of a sudden eating rice is racist. Come on. Mexicans eat rice, you know. Asians, we cut grass too. Not for a living, but, you know, we'll cut our grass by ourselves because we're cheap and we don't want to pay someone else to do it. But until next time, lighten up. Like your lenses for APS-C camera. Don't be buying those big ass things for, you know, for a freaking small ass sensor. Like, you don't need to, you know, if you don't have to. Peace.
Oh my God, that lens, it's so small. It's trad and unprofessional.
Bro, this lens is great. I don't know what you're talking about. Lightweight, sharp, fast autofocus.
No, man. If you want to be the best, if you want to be professional, if you want to be award-winning, you need to buy the big lens.
As in anything in life, bigger is not always better. Quality, not quantity.
Let me show you.
Oh my God. What does that have to do with quality?
Hanglo Masterclass on sale, $29.99.
Hi guys, Sony just released the brand new ZV-E10 Mark II, and I gave that camera a thorough review. Forbes magazine is saying it's the best review of all time. I didn't really check, I just assume they are saying that, but a lot of people in my comments were of course saying, what about the A6700? I know it's a little more expensive, but that camera seems to have everything the ZV-E10 II has and more. What about that camera? Well, there are some major differences between the two cameras besides the price, so why don't we talk about it? Now, it is true that Sony took some of the gizzards and the innards of an A6700, put it in a ZV body, and left some key features out so that the price could be down and beginner filmmakers could have this type of image quality. This is an A6700 right here. You have this type of image quality with a cheaper camera. Both cameras share the same 26 megapixel sensor, so the image quality in photos and video is going to be virtually identical. I will throw up a side-by-side here of the ZV-E10 Mark II and the A6700 with the same lens. As you can see, it looks pretty much the same. And that sensor will give you sharp 4K video that's downsampled from 5.6K. You get 10-bit 422, 14 plus stops of dynamic range, all-eye codecs, Sony's latest and greatest touch menu system, which I find very easy to navigate, same 1.04 million dot LCD screen, the same FZ100 battery for long record times, the same SD card slot on the side, and the same ports as well. And that slot on the side that houses the SD card only houses one SD card for both cameras. They both have 360-degree, fully articulating screens. You get great features like focus breathing compensation, focus mapping, all picture profiles including S-Cinetone, a bunch of Sony Creative looks, the ability to completely separate your photos from video, so if you're switching back and forth between photo or video, you will have different settings. They won't carry over. They have the exact same rolling shutter, which is measured at about 16 milliseconds, which is better than something like an A7 IV or a Panasonic S5 II, but not as good as an A7S III or a ZV-E1 that's around 8 milliseconds, but still very good for an APS-C camera. They both have the new time-lapse mode, where a time-lapse can be made in camera for you, and they have 4K 30 USB-C streaming. I am a huge fan of that. And of course, both cameras record gyro data to the SD card, so you can stabilize in post if you need to with Catalyst Browse or a program like GyroFlow. When it comes to overheating, I find in a controlled environment, this studio specifically 23 degrees, I get 4K 24 as long as I want on both cameras. 4K 60, I get a little longer with the ZV-E10 Mark II, maybe because of that little crop, but I usually get about an hour to an hour and 10 on the ZV-E10 Mark II, whereas I get about 40 minutes or so on the A6700. The A6700 will overheat fast in 4K 20, usually 10 to 20 minutes, and the ZV-E10 doesn't have 4K 120 at all. Now, other people have done overheating tests. Gerald Undone took the ZV-E10 out into very warm environments out in the sunshine, and of course, you are going to get overheating times right there, but I find it's very good in the studio itself. When it comes to USB-C streaming, once again, the ZV-E10 does a little bit better. I can stream as long as I want with the ZV-E10 Mark II, whereas the A6700, it usually dies after about an hour in my environment. Either way, I'm going to use that little Ulanzi cooling fan if I'm ever streaming for long periods of time with both of those cameras, just to be safe. Of course, your times may vary depending on the ambient temperature of where you live. So now let's talk about the differences. I will name the advantages for the A6700 and the advantages for the ZV-E10 Mark II. And there are some advantages for the ZV-E10. Okay, first and foremost, we have a 2.36 million dot EVF, electronic viewfinder, the thing you hold up to your eye when you want to take a photograph, especially in nice sunny weather. And while 2.36 million dots is not an amazing EVF, it is a pretty good EVF, and the ZV-E10 doesn't have one at all. When it is bright outside, you are going to miss that EVF, especially when you want to take photos. Another difference on the body is weather sealing. The A6700 is weather sealed, but the ZV-E10 Mark II, at least Sony is not mentioning any weather sealing, so I assume it is not a weather sealed camera, so this will be better in the elements. And sticking with the body, this has a front dial. So you have a rear dial and a front dial, and I certainly prefer that as a photographer, and I know most photographers prefer having two dials on the top of their camera. You have to use the jog wheel on the back of the ZV-E10 Mark II. You also have two more customizable buttons on the A6700, which can help you speed up your workflow. And of course, up top we have the PASM dial. It helps you switch quickly between modes or your custom modes, whereas the ZV-E10 Mark II, you will have to do that from the menu system. Now, one of the differences in video, it's a small one, but I should mention it, is in the 4K 60 mode, there is no crop at all in the A6700 or the FX30 for that matter. When you switch from 4K 24 to 4K 60, you won't see any change in the frame, whereas the ZV-E10 Mark II is about, it's not even a 1.1 times crop, it's about a 1.06 times crop, but it is there, and when you switch back and forth, it does pinch in a little tiny bit. And the fact that it does do that may be a clue as to why they left out the 4K 120 on the ZV-E10 Mark II. The A6700 has 4K 120, but not the ZV-E10 Mark II. Now, this is at a substantial crop, a 1.5 times crop for 4K 120, so you're going to want some decent light if you're shooting 4K 120 with the A6700. Still, it's much better to have it than to not have it. Since the ZV-E10 Mark II does crop in a little bit in 4K 60, maybe they just couldn't make it work in 4K 120 without cropping in way too far, at least in their opinion. I am only speculating. They haven't told me what the reason is. Maybe the reason is just to protect their flagship A6700. I am not sure, but it's strange that 4K 60 crops in a little bit, whereas it doesn't on the A6700. Another really big advantage for the A6700 is IBIS. It has in-body image stabilization right there in the camera, whereas the ZV-E10 Mark II only has electronic stabilization. So the crop, when you're in active stabilization mode with the A6700, is only about 12%. Whereas the crop, when you're in active stabilization mode of the ZV-E10 Mark II, is 33%. Let me just take you out into the real world and show you what that looks like right now. Check this out, the 11mm f1.8 doing my S-Log3 color grading, active stabilization, get a nice smooth footage with that enhanced electronic stabilization. Now, of course, I always recommend the 11mm f1.8 from Sony because when it comes to vlogging, that is, you get this bigger field of view, and it's even bigger here on the A6700 than the ZV-E10 because there's less of a crop. This is the kit lens right here with the color grading that I like to do, 10-bit 422 S-Log3 with a Leeming LUT. I am on a selfie stick, extending it out, and I have a little Hollyland microphone. That button is actually a microphone. So I really like this setup, and I think it's very doable. So now if you are going to vlog with the 16-50 kit lens, or maybe the Sony 15mm f1.4 or the Sigma 16mm, you are going to be much better off with the a6700. Ironically, it would be a better vlogging camera for you. So as strange as it is to say, the a6700 is a better vlogging camera in terms of stabilization. It is a little bit heavier than the ZV-E10.